morning, and welcome to the live series Straight Off the Bat. Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you join us from LinkedIn, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and today we're discussing what you should know about cybersecurity. Our guest today is Darren Dore. Darren is an IT professional with over 20 years of industry experience, and he is the founder of CyberSafe TT Foundation. What is cybersecurity? Because it's one of the more trending keywords online right now when people are searching. So for those who, like me, need to break it down to the simplest of terms, what is cybersecurity?
And that's a really good question to start off the discussion, because you could Google, what is cybersecurity and get a whole host of different answers. But it's really in the name, right? Cyber and security. So we could break it down into two words, right? I think we all know what security means, but let's look at cyber, because I think that's where the key part of it is. Now, when we say cyber, different people might have different understandings of it, but it's really all internet-related devices and applications. So everything that's connected to the internet at home or even in the office. So your websites, your servers, things like your security cameras, Internet of Things devices. We have so many smart plugs and smart switches and so on. Those are all part of this whole cyberspace that, we sometimes get lost in on a daily basis. And that forms part of cyber. So cybersecurity is the whole framework or understanding or concept of securing all of those devices that exist in cyberspace. Some of us have, fridge that are connected to the internet, and it'll ping you and tell you when you run out of eggs, And these sometimes we become a bit oblivious to some of the things that are connected and may not necessarily think about protecting those devices, because everything is connected to the internet now. And that's, the whole understanding of what cybersecurity is. It's being able to secure and protect all of those devices. And we'll get into, obviously, all the reasons why we need to secure those devices. Now, to go a little technical, these devices are referred to as endpoints. So I would probably say a few years ago, we may have only been concerned with antivirus software or firewalls for cybersecurity, implementations. But now we look at EDRs or endpoint detection. So all of these little things that we have around our house, iPads and smart switches and all the computers, even in the business, right? Switches and servers, they are all endpoints. And it means it's an opportunity for a hacker to come into our network or to come into our homes. So we are looking at cybersecurity, protecting all of those devices in the cyberspace.
Can you give us some, tips, maybe one or two tips as to how folks who have to manage a team remotely can reduce the likelihood of someone clicking on that link?
It really boils down to changing our approach to the way in which we operate, right? So yes, you would have cybersecurity awareness training. We may have phishing simulators where intentionally the IT department may send phishing emails to staff as a test. And if you click on it, then immediately you have to go back to do some training. I know some companies in the, in the Gulf Coast who, deal heavily with oil and this type of thing. And if you click on phishing emails at least more than 3 or 5 times, you are actually sanctioned to a certain extent where you may lose some of your pay, because they've realized that a simple click on that link could cost them millions or even billions, because we're speaking about, the major conglomerates in the world. It's something that, you have to, pay quite a lot of attention to. So intentionally introducing your employees to these scams and dealing with it in a controlled environment is definitely one surefire way of learning. And you will become more diligent and maybe skeptical when you're reading emails and seeing, this does not sound right. From the bank's perspective, I've seen multiple messages from the banks, and it's really, really commendable, where they indicate that we will not ask you to do certain things.
welcome back to Straight Off the Bat. Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us from Facebook today, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that'll help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and we are speaking about the psychology of money. And it's a timely discussion because we're celebrating Financial Literacy Month. And we're joined today by Dominic Stoddard. He has been the Financial Services Ombudsman of Trinidad and Tobago since 2016. He's joined us here before, but today it's quite an interesting and robust conversation. And we're talking about the psychology of money. So I have a lot of questions for him, but I want to give the audience some insight because we have some questions. So I'm going to start with, I believe I have Casey. So let's start with Casey Rowley. Wants to know, how can we reprogram limiting beliefs from embedded money scripts? So we spoke about money scripts earlier. We actually shared what exactly that was. And if you missed that, don't worry. Once this live is finished, you can go and replay. So Dominic, give us some insight on how we could reprogram our minds, because this is a hard one. I feel like the older we get, the harder this is to change our minds.
I would not say that it's easy. It will be challenging, but it's achievable, it's attainable. And the strategy is really simple. It comes down to 4 words. Man, know thyself. This quote has been attributed to various people: Socrates, Heraclitus, Pythagoras, Shillon. I'm not really sure where it originates. But what it says is that you have to understand yourself, look within, identify your triggers. What makes me feel this way? What makes me think that I need to do this or I need to get that? And if as adults we say it becomes more difficult as you're adult, do a needs and wants assessment for adults. We do it for children. We ask them, is this a need or a want? And they keep clicking need, want, whichever one it is, and we play these games with them. Do it as an adult. When you're about to get something, you want to purchase something online, or you pass by a furniture store and you want something, or something seems to be giving a bit of a problem in the household, and you think, well, look, I don't want any problems, time to change that. Postpone making the immediate decision and ask yourself, is this a need or a want? There are times when you might feel so compelled to get something that I need this. You just take 1 or 2 or just a couple of days and step back and ask yourself, if you're able to hold off for those few days and you still come up with it as a need, it probably is a genuine need. And sometimes after a day or 2 pass, you lose the itch for it and you realize, I just really wanted that. And in today's world, we acquire a lot of stuff, and a lot of it we don't use for long periods of time. So we really want to first come to an understanding of ourselves and our relationship with money, and then make sure that we properly classify things into needs and wants. That's part of the reprogramming and dealing with your inborn money script.
And welcome back to Straight Off the Bat. Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us from YouTube, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and in honor of Mother's Day, today we're discussing motherhood and money. We're joined by Tony, Raquel, and Kathleen. We're going to bring them back in because we have questions in the comments, so we want to just answer them. I think we have a question here from Vanessa for Kathleen, asking about the 50-30 rule, if it applies to gross or net income.
Net income. You can't count your tax. That's going to be pulled out regardless. So apply it on what you're taking home, and it'll give you a better way of budgeting this out.
Thank you so much for that, Kathleen. So the name of the receipt app, they also want to find out what that is, and it's Simply Wise, guys. The app is called Simply Wise, correct, Kathleen?
Correct. But if you actually Google financial planning applications, you get about 100 of them come. So don't worry about the name of that one in particular. There are thousands available. So just go online. Amazing what the Googler can give you.
Yes, I know. It's the internet is more than social media and TikTok videos, guys. It's truly amazing. All right, so let's talk about this conversation around household responsibilities, because let's be honest, it was assigned to women, at the beginning of time. And when it comes to sharing responsibilities, and it was mentioned by Raquel before, choosing a partner, but the reality is sometimes, I don't want to say mistakes, but we make decisions that may not necessarily help us for the future. So any advice for men out there who have to manage childcare and household responsibilities while pursuing their professional advancement?
I remember my grandmother telling me a story. When she was about to give birth, she went to the nursing home with a midwife. And after the baby was born, they called her husband to tell her, oh, it's a boy, it's a girl. When I was growing up, my mother religiously took all 5 of us to every single extracurricular. Dropped one and swimming, went to ballet with the next one, football with the next one, while my father was at work. And my kids' primary school, we have something called the St. Andrew's Dads, and they do $1 a day once a term. It's 10 o'clock in the morning to come and sell pizza and chicken tenders and brownies and cookies. There are about 80 dads that come with the St. Andrew's polo on over their shirt and tie and are very visible and present. You go to an extracurricular, and I'm not just talking about the boys that are doing football and cricket, so the dad is with them. My daughter would have done netball and cheerleading in St. Joseph's Convent. My husband was very present, and so were most of the other fathers. So the role of both women and men have quite evolved over the centuries. And if we are both vested in being breadwinners and contributing to the livelihoods that we have, then we're also both vested in being caregivers. Like your other panelists, I've had the privilege of having an amazing husband and a huge village. And every opportunity, every decision, everything that came up in our lives, we sat down and had a very open conversation, and it's not a one and done. Marriage is easy. It's real easy to coexist with somebody. Bringing children into the mix changes the dynamics of what you do, what you can do, who you need to think of. We would literally sit down and say, okay, if I take this role, it means I'm going to be outside of town. Can you handle the picking up of the kids? Well, I can do 3 of the days, I can't do the other 2. And I created a little village. There are at least 6 people outside of my mom and my sister who, if ever I'm in a jam and I call, they both come to my help. They've been my kids' friends that we have bonded with over the years. At the drop of a ball, I can pick up the phone and call any of them, and I know they'll be there. So Trinidad culture, everybody has a auntie, everybody has a mother, everybody has somebody that they can lean on. We need to remove the embarrassment of asking for help, because we're all spinning out of control. Life is moving so fast. We need to support each other. And the same way I could call 6 of them, none of them would hesitate to call me if they needed help as well. So it's just about creating that village, creating space, sharing the minding of the home and the kids, sharing the contributing financially. It's just about a more balanced approach. And maybe that's why we only have 2 kids, because parents want to be more involved. We don't, your child wants to do extracurricular, your whole family sitting down and present for every weekend that you're playing tennis, you're playing football, you're playing cricket. So it's about keeping your family size small enough that it's manageable for the 2 of you. It's about balancing each other's workload. My husband's job is a little more flexible than mine, so the earlier pickups he does, the 3 days where my son stays late, I do, and we find our way.
welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that helps you understand financial literacy and education. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're doing so from LinkedIn, don't forget to subscribe to our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline, and today we're discussing home ownership and mortgages with Kieran at Scotiabank, Trinidad and Tobago. So we're going to bring him in because the comment section is active and we have a lot to cover and not that much time. So I'm going to get to your questions a bit, guys, but before I do, I want to ask you, what is a sales agreement? Because a sale agreement in the context of the mortgage conversation that we're having right now, just in case anybody may have missed what we had discussed earlier. So Kieran, what is a sale agreement?
Right. So Pauline, a sale agreement basically is a legally binding agreement between a vendor, and vendor meaning person selling, and a purchaser. Is basically offer and acceptance. So you have a property to sell. I'm an interested purchaser. We engage, we understand the terms and conditions of the sale agreement. So the sale agreement basically covers and has specific terms within the agreement. Well, the most important thing within the sale agreement is how much am I purchasing for? The sale agreement also covers stuff like the address of the property, if there are any covenants or any other things that one needs to pay attention to. One of the major things that you want to look at within your sale agreement is the length of time you have. In Trinidad and Tobago, the standard time is 90 days. Again, that can be changed depending on the negotiation between vendor and purchaser. When you sign a sale agreement, it means that a vendor has agreed to certain terms and conditions to sell this property, and a purchaser has agreed as well. So at the point of signing that sale agreement, I as a purchaser will be handing over a down payment check, and that is your offer and acceptance. I mean, sale agreements can be tweaked. Some vendors accept the 5% because we know in the market at Scotiabank, we can do up to 95% financing, right? Some persons still may ask for the 10%, right? So it could be tweaked accordingly based on the customer's pre-qualification. Pre-qualification will kind of guide the vendor in terms of taking that 5% or less than that 10%. That is normally the standard within a sale agreement.
Okay, so thank you so much for that again, Kieran. We're going to head over to the comment section because I don't want it to run away from us, and there are a lot of questions. So we're going to start with Priya. How do you determine as a first-time homeowner the amount needed for legal, closing fees, and stamp duty?
Right, so very good question, Priya. Thanks for that. So within our pre-qualification process, what we do as mortgage specialists is that we not only assess how much you qualify for, but we go the extra step in confirming how much is the legal fees. So at the point of getting pre-qualified, when you leave that interview on that day, you will know exactly or have an average of what are the fees associated with the transaction. So what we do, we actually engage one of our panel attorneys to get a quote to determine what is the estimated legal fees in this transaction. So as I mentioned earlier, legal fees together with all other fees associated with the transaction, once you come in to get pre-qualified, you will be leaving knowing how much you need to inject in this transaction together with your down payment to cover all fees.
All right, thanks for that question, Priya. We're going to go into another question coming from Ren on Facebook. What's the process if you want to move your mortgage portfolio from one institution to the bank?
All right, nice. So the process is pretty simple. Similarly, you will get pre-qualified. In this case, we would not have a sale agreement because you already own the property. Once it is that you're pre-qualified, the next steps will be conducting a valuation and a search. The valuation basically will determine what percentage financing we can lend to now not only switch the mortgage across to Scotia, but also a lot of persons look at the option of switching not only because of preferred rates or packages, but also consolidating debts. And it's a really good question because I want persons to understand that a lot of persons have equity on their property and they really don't know the options available. So what we can look at doing is understanding, okay, for example, if the balance on your mortgage is say 600,000 and the property is worth 2 million, then there's a lot of equity on the property. So not only a straight switch to settle the existing mortgage, but we can also look at the option of consolidating other debts that the customer may have, right? They may have other needs such as home renovations, educational expenses for their children, purchasing another property, purchasing land, for example, that we can look at the option of giving them that additional equity within switching the mortgage so that they could purchase the other property or incur those other expenses.
How many of us have opened an account and just, don't even remember what the password is, but you no longer go on that website? So I assume that would be a breadcrumb, correct?
That would not be a breadcrumb, but that's also a point for concern. Like you said, some persons will actually open an account and forget it's there and forget the password till get in. Often enough, what some persons tend to do, they tend to reuse passwords. Like they will use the same password for their Hotmail accounts as for their Gmail account because it's easy to remember. But when you do something like that and you use the same password for an account that you open that you don't use and you forgot about it, and that server becomes compromised, that password is now also compromised, and they could use that password to do any nefarious or malicious things that they want to do.
So do you have any advice for us older folks who it's just a lot to remember all these passwords? Just a quick note, do you have any suggestions for folks who may be guilty of this?
Okay, so there are a lot of things to do. The most common thing to do is actually have a password manager. That's a software or an app that stores all your passwords. Most of the times, these password managers actually require a password themselves, or they come in a form of your phone that you could actually just bio-lock it. But the most common practice that we try to help persons with who don't want to get that deep into it is to actually have a passphrase. Passwords were meant to be like 8 characters long. You go in and they tell you it's supposed to be 8 characters long. But with the evolution of time and the techniques used by cyber criminals to break these passwords, the new best practice now is anywhere between 13 to 16 characters, and they are encouraged not to use a password or like a passphrase. Something as simple as "my dog likes bones" without any spaces or any special characters. You could alternate the capital letters if you want, but it needs to be something that you could remember that only you know alone. But you don't reuse it or you don't get any variations of it. But remember to associate that phrase with whatever you're going to use it for. But the most effective way is actually using a password manager.
Wow, okay. So when we think we know things, it changes. It changes so quickly.
It does.
Shout out to Fareed Mohammed joining us on Facebook. Thanks for joining us on our session today. So something you said earlier, and I think we need to elaborate on it because these sessions, when they're over, folks could go back to it and watch it on replay. So I like to just make sure we are clear on stuff. When you mentioned a bio-lock, can you explain what that is? Because a lot of us may be using it but don't understand the terminologies behind it.
Okay, so a bio-lock is just shortened for a biometric lock. You do use it. All those who have iPhones use it. Most of these Samsung, most of these smartphones have it where you just have your fingerprint and you just touch it and it maps your fingerprint geometry and geography to lock anything from apps to software to even your phone. Where you just use a fingerprint and that's it.
Thank you so much for that, because a lot of times we may feel uncomfortable using it because we're like, okay, we don't want our facial recognition, because a lot of us watched Terminator back in the day. I think that was a documentary. So what say you to those who are maybe fearful of using that method of locking their information?
It's something that is encouraged right now. Biometric locking and even facial recognition is a form of two-factor authentication. That's something you can't, I'm not going to say can't fake. With the introduction of AI now, facial recognition is something that is coming along the way, that persons, with the help of something called deepfake, which is AI software used to manipulate or give the false identification of someone. So with deepfake, someone could take my face and actually use it and produce videos and pictures of me doing something when it's not really me. I've been in conferences where I've actually seen deepfake in action, where it's someone totally different, but they're using the likeness of someone else to actually speak and move like them online but not in person. But with that said, it is still a form of two-factor authentication to use to lock your devices. I myself use two-factor authentication, facial recognition, as well as biometrics to lock my phones, to lock other devices. It's something, and something is better than nothing when you're trying to protect yourself. What we say in the field is not a matter of if you're going to get attacked or if you're going to get hit, is when. And what we encourage persons to do is have layers of protection when they're trying to protect their data. And password is not enough. You have the passphrase, and then when you add the biometrics onto that, you add a layer, and you add the biometrics and facial recognition. That's the next layer. I could tell you, speaking from an attacker side of things, the longer it takes for an attacker to try to get your password, it's going to not give them much interest anymore. The longer it takes, that's less time it takes for the attacker to actually get to my objective. Right now, in standard, if it takes an attacker more than a minute 35 seconds to crack a password, that's too long. I'm going to move on to something else. So when you put these layers in place and they try to come at you and they go through one try, and after a minute goes, they don't succeed, they find someone else, they move along. Right? So it's a deterrent at the end of the day.
Well, I guess that's good to know. The attention span is just as effective as a 3-year-old. Good to know. All right, so I know you mentioned deepfakes, and I just wanted to let everybody know we did have that session, our last live session. You can check it out on our social media platforms, Protection Against Cyber Attacks in Trinidad and Tobago with Sharon and Donna Lisa. They did cover in-depth deepfakes, so that's definitely a conversation worth exploring. So let's go back to this C-Cert and certificate. Like, what exactly is that?
It's not really a certificate. The CCERT is, as I said, the Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, and CERT stands for Computer Emergency Response Team. It's used interchangeably within the field, but they both function almost at the same level. What they're responsible for is upkeeping the cyber resilience and the cyber hygiene of a nation, of a country. They help with the collaboration within different states. They help build resilience. They help actually be responsive when it comes to a cyber incident, and they actually help with proactive response in the cyberspace.
What is the importance when it comes to looking at this cyber conversation, the cyber hygiene, from a country's perspective? Because I feel like there has been this very quick and massive shift over to this online behavior. So it's interesting when you actually come out of your phone and you look around, you realize literally everybody's on their phone. Scarily so sometimes, because you buy a traffic and you turn around and this person's like...
and I've seen it. It's scary. Where, just like you said, you're driving and you're in traffic and the car is moving and you're seeing someone in your food, right? And the vehicle is moving. But to come as a nation, as a country, you need to be more aware. Cyber is good, cyberspace is good, digitalization is good, but with every good comes the bad. And you need to be cautious in a lot of things you do online. Just because it's online, that doesn't mean it's safe. Just because it's virtual, that doesn't mean it cannot hurt you physically in the physical world. A lot of things that happen in the digital world could actually have physical and real world impact. So you need to be a lot more cautious and a lot more observant when you're doing these things. Yes, the device is good. I have a friend, he calls it a little devil. I don't see it as a little devil. It's a device that's for convenience. But there should be a limit as to what you allow it to do and what you do with it. And you need to be cautious when in cyberspace. You need to be cautious of what you look at, what you click on, where you visit, what you say, what you do. All these things have real world impacts if it happens to go in the wrong hands.
Yeah, it's actually something that's quite interesting, because you now have to shift your mindset on your behavior online, because we thought that, back in the MSN days when you're having whole entire conversations, life has shifted so quickly. So we're going to go on a break, and when we come back, we're going to have the conversation around what is the weakest link in the context of, us as individuals online, but also in your business. So we'll be right back after this. back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that helps you understand financial literacy and education. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're doing so from YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. Today, we're discussing tips to increase your cyber hygiene in Trinidad and Tobago. And we are joined by Rick Logan Stanford. He is team lead of infrastructure, policies, and legislation at the Trinidad and Tobago Cybersecurity Incident Response Team. So that's a lot in terms of your role, but I imagine you have a lot to do. So let's get into this discussion around the weakest link. NCIS is a huge and very popular show. The show is CSI. And a lot of us take that for a reality that, to me, I just, I have to chuckle because everybody thinks that someone's, in a hood somewhere typing away with 5 screens. So when it comes to cybersecurity, what are some of the surprises people may not be aware of when it comes to the weakest link when people are hacked?
Okay, so before I answer the question, I would just go to something you said about hackers. You envision someone in a hood just typing out a keyboard. Surprisingly enough, there was a crackdown on a cyber criminal organization. And when they found the head of this criminal organization, it was actually a grandmother. They arrested her in the kitchen baking cookies for her granddaughter. Everyone was expecting this hardened criminal, but no, people were shocked. Her own kids were shocked to know that she was running this multi-international cyber crime organization. But to answer your question, when you talk about the weakest link, I would say the weakest link is us. People, actually. Without the proper awareness, we are the weakest link in ourselves, because just like you said before, when it is that you go with these phones, you do a check-in on Facebook and you're checking in and giving people your geolocation. You could actually be telling criminals where you are, for they could come and rob you. You're telling people you're away, and these people who scour the internet or scour these social media for persons who travel to go and traffic them, you actually tell them where you are. Simple things like that, because you're doing it unknowingly. But once you do know, you need to be a little more aware and a little more conscious of what it is you do online. Some of the things you click, not every link comes across, you click them. Not every single post that comes across Facebook is legitimate, and that's the problem with some people. They believe because it's on Facebook, because it's online, it's real. That's correct. No. What we need more awareness. We need to be just a little bit paranoid online. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit paranoid. Second guess everything that you see. Don't take everything for face value when you see it online, especially links from persons you don't know. Weird links, and especially if it's too good to be true. Click on this and you get $500, or just copy this link and you get access to free software or something like that. These sort of things, you need to be a little more conscientious about it. So without our proper awareness, it could be hazardous and dangerous.
That story you mentioned, forget about The Godfather, Netflix special, The Grandmother, that is...
yes.
It's giving some viral moments.
It's mind-blowing, because that was just one. There was another case where they cracked down and they found 3 individuals that were working in another sting, where there were 3 guys caught. One was at the age of 36, one was at the age of 12, and the other was 24. The 12-year-old was their boss. He was the one running the show, and they didn't know. No one knew. 12 years old.
Wow. I guess, it takes any age to achieve what you need to achieve. So this is very interesting in terms of the type of relationship we have with the internet, obviously. I want to head over to the comments because we have a question from Robert, because we would have talked about earlier about passwords and, how do we remember these passwords, because they have so many, and you mentioned password manager. Someone wants to know any consideration for passkeys.
Passkeys, you could use passkeys as well. Passkeys are good. Once it is that you know how it's used and how to keep it, because when you lose a pass, it's just like same thing with any password manager. You lose that and you lose your access. With passkeys now, it's a bit more secure, but I will say it's more for the technical side of things. For the non-technical people, password manager. For the persons who are more comfortable with technology, you could go ahead with the passkeys. So passkeys is good as well, but I wouldn't advise it for someone on the street who don't know about it. It can get complicated for them. But for a professional, IT professional, someone in the IT field, yes.